We are live on Biohacking News. Red meat, misunderstood superfood or health hazard. Despite claims that red meat is inflammatory, we need to distinguish today, I think, between processed meats like pizza toppings and hot dogs and natural, nutrient dense animal foods. Recently, it's been revealed that nutrition education has been heavily influenced by big food companies. Oh dear, that's what we're talking about today on Biohacking News. Yes, hello, welcome to Biohacking News. I'm Tony Wright. And before we go any further, please do like and subscribe. I'm delighted to say that I've got a renowned biohacker and the founder of Live Vitae on Biohacking News today. Ryan Carter is here, live from Nicaragua. How you doing, mate?
Great to catch up and great to speak to you and be here.
Oh, could you just give us a little? I know this is obviously going out live, but then a lot of people will listen on the podcast. This will be totally lost on them. But could you just give us a quick look at the view? Because it is gorgeous where you are right now. Look at that. I mean, it's just forest and trees and tropical scenery as far as the eye can see. Is life
Well,
tree?
well, that said, it's only just turned to the wet season. So if I showed you that view 2 weeks ago, it would be very different. So literally, the green has just exploded as soon as there was a bit of water here. Because it's like here where I am, there's rain like 5 months on and off, and then there's just dry season for like 7 months, and it's dry and hot. So again, it's like a bit like not as bad as the UK weather, but again, there's seasons here as well. But just green and sea I can see here.
Yeah. Fantastic. And we've just been catching up. I mean, we would have missed our podcast slot if I hadn't actually said, right, we've got to start recording now. But I find always, because obviously I'm in Portugal, you're in Nicaragua there. And I always say that it's not brilliant advice saying on a biohacking podcast, you just need to move out of the country. But it is, it is easy to live a good, healthy life when you're living somewhere like you do.
Well, for sure. Again, it definitely makes life easier basically on all fronts, whether it's buying direct avocados or mangoes or bananas. Literally, most of the food in your supermarket comes from the tropics
Mm,
nowadays. So again, if you're living here, it's actually going to be better quality, but it's going to be matched with your biology at the same time. So again, a fundamental principle to understand is food is essentially just stored light. It's just the mass of light essentially slowed down. So again, where you find yourself around the world is technically needs to be coherent with the food that you should be consuming as well.
mm,
So again, there's a match there, matched in heaven, or again, it could be a bit of a match in hell where you're eating out of season, you're not eating local produce. And obviously in the UK, that's a bit difficult. Where again, like if you actually ate with that principle, you wouldn't be eating much in winter, like in the winter time or in December. It would literally just be some protein and some fat. There's not much vegetables growing. So again, that's a sort of fundamental principle to really understand, and one of the luxuries of living somewhere like Nicaragua, not just the weather and but the food and being able to eat like this. But again, like we said
mm.
on before, I actually do think the issue is living in the big cities. And again, there is a time when that's needed. Again, you're talking to someone who's lived in London for like 20 years of my life. And again, like West London in a very populated area, in a flat, basically on the top floor, which Tony experienced was freezing cold because I didn't turn on the heating because I was biohacking. And again, I do think the problem is living in a city where, again, you can have an amazing life in the countryside, as an example, and it's fairly close to this type of lifestyle, basically, where you could be close to the sea. There could be a river to swim in, which is totally healthy, where you haven't got any floaters going around in the river or dead bodies or anything like that. But again, I mean, living in the countryside and more connected to nature is the ultimate biohack, in my opinion. And no supplement can actually give you that.
Yeah. Why did it? I think it was early November that I came to your flat, and you just didn't have the heating on. It's absolutely freezing. I was sat in your armchair, absolutely huddled up, wearing my overcoat. What was going on there?
I think when it's so cold and you breathe and it comes out,
Yeah.
I think that was happening basically. But again, I mean, I just didn't turn the heating on because again, I was practicing cold therapy, and again,
Yeah.
obviously keeping the bills down as well. So again, I didn't have much money then, so I was trying to keep the bills down, but also be biohacking at the same time. And again, it doesn't require you to literally jump in the ice bath or maybe the sea where you are, where it's pretty cold, Tony. Again, it can just be induced from not turning the heater on, basically. That's still cold therapy, and that actually is more mimicking something our ancestors done. Sorry. So again, they didn't jump into basically like a lake with an ice cap. They actually just had continuous low grade cold exposure for long periods of time, and obviously they had fires. They did keep warm. They weren't cold all the time. But again, that's what I was sort of reflecting um, and inducing in myself, basically.
Yeah. I think you even had the window open. I mean, it was
Yeah.
madness.
And it was after a QPR football game, I believe.
It was, yeah, yeah. That was good. You taught me to put rosemary in my coffee as well, which was lovely.
Yeah,
Um,
fantastic.
well, listen, I've been absolutely loving your posts recently. Congratulations on becoming a daddy, and some of your parenting posts I've found very, very inspiring. And I've got a whole list of things I've been making notes over the last few weeks that I wanted to talk about. Let's start by talking about red meat then. Um, you talked on a podcast recently about how nutrition education has been heavily influenced by big food companies, leading to this sort of biased information and shaming of certain foods while promoting others. And this is a theme of yours, especially based around red meat, but around a lot of foods. And I think it's really important that you're bringing this to people's attention. How can biohackers then discern between biased information and scientifically backed dietary advice? Because it's hard, isn't it? Oh, I tell you what, I think we've lost Ryan for a second. So what we'll do is we are still live, so that's good news. And we can take Ryan off the feed for a sec and hope that he comes back and joins us in just a sec. I've got a whole list of things I want to talk to Ryan about, including protein choices for biohackers. And there
There
he is.
we're
You back,
back.
Ryan? Good,
I don't know if that was
excellent.
me or if it was you, but again, things happen like that in Nicaragua.
Yeah, well, no, that's all part of the fun. Luckily, if there's one thing I've learnt after 20 years working as a TV presenter, and that is how to be a professional bullshitter when someone's line goes down. So I can keep going. Don't worry, if it happens again, I'll keep the show on the road. It's absolutely fine. So I was just asking, how can biohackers discern between
Yeah,
the good
well,
information and the
so
biased stuff?
so again, I mean, there's a bit of half truths in both ends of the spectrum. Okay, so again, when we're talking about vegans or people like Bill Gates trying to tell everyone to stop eating meat, or the Eat Lancet sort of agenda, or the WEF telling everyone to cut down on meat because of carbon emissions, but yet flying with their super jets and stuff like that. And then we have people like, I don't know, Sean Baker or other carnivore people out there and just say, just eat red meat, salt. Again, where we want to find ourselves is just being in a bit of the middle,
Mm,
basically. Now, again, these people who are at the spectrum, for me personally, as a clinician, when I see this, there's something wrong with their biology.
mm,
If they need to be all in on something, there's a bit of a disconnect there, basically. Again, no one should be that extreme with a diet. Now, maybe if you're an Inuit, again, obviously living with no sunlight, that would change the picture a little bit. But again, in our modern environment and where most people live in the world, there is vegetation there. And there's also animal products there. Okay. So again, nutritional science is littered with conflicts. Again, the actual standard of research is fairly poor at best. So again, it's very hard to get exact variables. So again, eat X, that causes Y. It
mm,
rarely does happen. So it's again, it's all associations. Now again, where you do run into problems is you get people like Dr. Ids, basically, and most people know who he is. Again, he's just so evidence based that he doesn't use common sense either. Okay. So again, we need to find this middle ground and realize that, okay, the majority of animals out there actually eat other animals. Why would humans be different? Again, we are very different to sort of
mm,
um, just vegetarians out there, other vegetarians. We have a different gut. Okay.
mm,
So again, our biology has a high requirement of protein. And again, that is encompassed with nutrients involved with that, whether that's
mm,
iron, zinc, selenium, again, other fat soluble vitamins like vitamin A, E. D, even vitamin K found in some organ meats. And again, we need protein. We need it from animals, but again, we don't need so much of it at the same time. Okay. And again, we have to understand the idea of time or idea of age, and different people at different times of our lives have a different requirement. So again, our protein from animals shouldn't just be fixed. It's a bit like our calories or our macronutrients. It shouldn't be fixed. It's a very varied number, and it's variable through our lifetime, through our situations. As an example, you could injure yourself or have a skin injury. You need more protein to improve repairing.
Mm.
Or example, when we get older, our ability to digest food reduces. So again, we would actually need more protein to make up for it. Or again, when we're young and developing, like a baby at 6 months old, they need a bigger amount of iron coming in, because breast milk doesn't supply that, or formula fed doesn't really supply that, although it's obviously fortified. So again, there's a need, but it's variable. But again, also when we look at the research as a whole, it's important, but we also need vegetables at the same time. Now, again, how are we cooking the meat? Are we charring it on a barbecue all the time?
Mm.
What are we serving alongside the meat? Is it obviously seed oil drenched French fries, or a milkshake with some poorly raised cow's milk basically going in the mix and loads of sugar, as an example? Or again, is it with some freshly cooked vegetables with a bit of butter or olive oil with some garlic and some herbs? Again, how we eat the food as well also has effect. Are we eating it in an environment that is beneficial for our health, or are we eating it rushed on the go? Okay, so again, there's so many variables going in. What's our microbiome like? How did we actually get that from mum? How did we develop it when we were a baby? This is also going to dictate the food choices, or how we're going to metabolize protein as well. So again, animal protein can be fermented. It can make short chain fatty acids. But again, with that, long term, it's going to be causing a problem. Again, when we become carnivore or keto too long, we can actually induce insulin resistance in itself without
Mm.
even eating carbohydrates. Okay. So again, it always comes with a variable. But again, for me, eating quality meat, again, depending on if you can, on your budget, is so important as well. It's not just about you, it's about the environment and how we're going to leave this planet when we're obviously not here anymore, basically. How are we going to leave it to our generations? Obviously, we should leave it in a better place, if not the same. And again, that requires understanding about regenerative farming, basically, about the soil, about how actually like cow shit or cow poo can basically regenerate the soil, and all the microbes and all the mushroom sort of networks, the fungi networks involved with it. So again, it's when we get dictated by say Bill Gates and all these agendas out there about reducing like animal protein, it's because they want to feed you basically like dog food. So pulverized grains, boxed cereals,
Mm.
pastas. Again, this food is basically cheap to make, but again, it actually destroys our environment as a whole. But again, that can also be applied to how some people do like cattle farming now, where again, especially in like the feedlots, they just bulldoze the land and just put a shed up and basically just chain these cows and just pump them with growth factors. And again, it's just like a machine, which is a bit like corn and soy and everything else. So
Mm.
again, there's a middle ground where again, I don't think there's anything wrong with ancestral prepared grains. And again, I don't think there's anything wrong with ancestrally raised meat. Again, I'm actually on the belief that I don't think beef is the be all and end all as well. I also think there should be a variety in our meat choices. It should be about lamb, it should be about turkey. In the UK, it should be about venison. Maybe in the US, about bison or buffalo, as an example.
Chicken?
Here, well, I classify. I think chicken's fine, but again, I classify chicken a bit like as beef. It's very much like domesticated. I would say
Mm.
turkey is like more sort of ancestral to a certain degree,
Mm.
but even that, like, it's a bit like fruits nowadays when you can see some images of like what a banana used to look like. You could probably see that with like beef and chicken and even like pork, comparing that to like a wild boar. But again, it is what it is in our modern world. We can't change that now. We can't go back in time. So again, we have to adapt and be open to again these foods. But again, I mean, I would say a variety in a protein source is not just dependently beef and think beef is like the best thing ever. But again, like lamb, goat, if you like pork, chicken, turkey, duck, quail, rabbit, venison. Again, there's so much variety in the land animals. And what you get is you get different nutrients involved with that. So we're not getting the standard typical zinc, iron of the cow or the typical dense amino acids of the cow. We're actually getting more variety coming in, basically. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really important thing. But again, it's just like chicken and beef is largely in the UK supermarkets the most widely available thing. It's very hard to walk into sort of an Asda or a Lidl and see like duck breasts or duck legs. It's not really going to happen. So that's where we have to go out of our act differently, seek out farmers market, buy online as well. So again, find out these independent sellers, become more decentralized, don't shop in the supermarket or as little as possible because they are essentially controlling what you buy, basically. So
Mm.
again, you have to think for yourself. And that's also the same thing what we're going on with like the research with the science. Listen to both camps, whether it's vegan or carnivores, and just realize, yeah, there's a bit of truth that if you grill your meat all the time, you're actually causing some damage and causing some carcinogenic properties. But again, if you actually listen to some of their good stuff, oh, add a little bit of rosemary in, that actually protects it. Or add a little bit of extra virgin olive oil. The polyphenols in the olive oil are going to protect the potential glycation products of the meat and the fat as well.
Mm.
So again, we have to understand that about evolution, but then apply it in our modern way thinking, basically, of using and understanding research, understanding that people are very extreme for view counts. But again, what we're doing here is, again, the general public need to improve their ability to understand nuance and context. That's not sexy. That doesn't sell. It's much more
Yeah.
better to say, I eat eggs a day and I'm a carnivore, blah blah blah. Or again, like meat is poison. Again, that's exciting. It's like entertainment. But again,
Yeah.
that's not where reality really is, unfortunately.
Yeah. Just for people who are just joining our live stream, Ryan, you are sounding absolutely perfect. Your picture's gone a little bit grainy, but we've already explained you're in Nicaragua and it's a small price to pay for the beautiful life you're living out there. But we can hear you great, so that's all good. And that actually leads me on quite nicely because we've been sort of talking about biased nutritional information. And then we look at some of the sort of favorite characters in our world. And I'm thinking of perhaps Paul Saladino, who's been on this podcast before, who espoused the carnivore diet for a while, and it is now sort of, I think, carnivore fruit and honey. And then Eddie Abu, I've noticed you've posted some fun stitches about him recently, and I
Yeah.
love Eddie's content, but I know that it's not for everybody. What do you think about those two in relation to sort of nutritional advice for biohackers?
Yeah, I mean, again, you have to understand that this is what's working for them, and there's reasons behind it. That doesn't mean it's going to be applying to you directly. Now, again, there's things that we can take from them, blah blah blah, and that's good. And then we can actually apply a little bit. We can then use some feedback, whether it's HRV or whether it's like noticing our stool or how we're feeling, and then we can make changes. Basically, that's the N=1. That's what biohacking is all about: listening to different people's opinions, listening to science, making some small changes, and then seeing how we respond to it. I mean, Paul's diet, this is the problem in the space is people use absolutism. Basically, I'm carnivore, I'm keto, and then they move the goalposts. So again, it's a bit like a first timer, essentially. When you first try the vegan diet, it's the best thing ever, best thing ever. Or then when you first try the carnivore for a few weeks, oh my god, it's the best thing ever, best thing ever. And then again, it's moving the goalposts. So again, understand that it's a first time response typically
Mm.
with most diet protocols. That's also the same with calorie deficits. Okay. So, again, when you first do a calorie deficit diet and start counting stuff, your body is going to be losing the weight much more easier than someone who's done several attempts of dieting, basically. That's called a first time response as well. And again, that's known in the literature. It gets harder to diet every single time you try because, again, there's more things out there than just calories, which again is a great thing that Eddie talks about. It's not just about calories, it's about the nutrients. But again, where Eddie comes up short is that he Again, I think for the general population, he promotes some amazing stuff. Again, I
Yeah.
think he's got great intentions. I just don't think he's clinically accurate in what he says. And again, there's just stuff that he just doesn't comprehend because again, he's still at this level about it's just about food. Okay. So again, like I just said earlier, people who are extreme, they typically have poor health. There's a reason behind the madness, essentially. So in Ed's case, and let's just use him as a case study, again, he's from Africa. Okay, he's got extremely dark skin. He lives in the UK, in the Midlands, or wherever it is. Again, that's a big issue with how his biology works. He eats at 5 o'clock. His next meal is at 9 o'clock. Most of your biohackers out there understand the importance of circadian biology. Eating that late and your first meal at 5 o'clock is going to be causing problems. He recently shared that his fasting blood glucose was 7.7, which again is basically in the ranges of a diabetic or insulin resistance.
Yeah, I
So
saw
again,
your
there's a
post about that.
yeah, so again, there's a big problem there with how that works. And then he's giving out this advice, which again, for the most part, is fine. Eat less junk foods. This processed food is doing no good for your health. So again, I mean, it's that sort of level of understanding. And again, I just think he's like 90, 80% there. But again, there's some just big things that really matter, and he's just not aware of
Mm.
basically. But I mean, Paul Saladino, again, his health improved where he lived just down the road from me in Costa Rica. And again, like I said, where you live, it should really dictate the food you consume. So
Mm.
again, he's eating fruit there now because again, it's sort of coherent with his environment.
Mm.
Now, again, I mean, he is a bit more heavy on like the sugar, fruits, honey. I do think that's maybe a bit too much for most people um, to sort of to do themselves because again most people are not as active as he is. And
Mm.
again, there's also something else that people don't understand is that I can include myself in this as well is again I live in a different lifestyle than most people listening to this information. Again,
Yeah.
I'm not ignorant of that. Again, I know that where I live is very unique. I don't have many neighbors around. I live in basically in a jungle. Most people are living next door to someone. So that changes your health massively. And that's
Mm.
the same thing with Paul Saladino, with Ben Greenfield, with anyone in the health space, basically. Again, it's a bit like a personal trainer telling you, oh, it's so easy just to go in the gym and train. What's your problem? You're just lazy. Oh, why can't you just count your calories? It's as simple as adding it on my fitness pal. Well, again, the issue there is that's their job.
Yeah.
That's their identity. You as a person, you got a job, you got family, you got responsibilities. That is not really important to you. That's not your identity. So there's a big disconnect there in understanding how this works in reality, basically.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, on the whole, these two people are good people. Again, I met Paul Saladino. Again, he's a good guy. His book's good. But again, I mean, you just have to take things with a pinch of salt in this health space. And even with me, but again, what I would differ in is again, I've got that clinical experience. I work with people around the world. I can't be dogmatic. If I'm dogmatic, I'm not going to be a good clinician. I can't adapt to different people's situations. Okay. Um, and that's when you understand the worlds of like, okay, what's so good about a plant-based diet? What's so good about a meat-based diet? What can we extract from that? How am I going to use that in that situation with that one client as an example? Okay. That's what like everybody else out there needs to sort of understand that.
Yeah. Um, okay. Love talking about that. And I think it might be, since we're talking about influential voices in the health space, I did want to ask you, because there are themes that emerge on your Instagram, which is very, very popular. And I urge everybody to come and find it at Live Vitae. And you've been talking about urine therapy. So
Yeah.
let me just introduce this a little bit. What you've been doing is you've been stitching your reaction to people talking about how urine therapy and genuinely saying that this could provide potential benefits, could link in with science in some way, and perhaps could link in with Chinese and Ayurvedic medicine, or as far as I can see, the links are fairly tenuous. And you've been saying, look, urine contains waste products and heavy metals and other substances that aren't great, and drinking it is probably posing more health risks than benefits. but and as some of these influencers are applying it topically as well. So what's going on? I mean, is this quite a big trend on Instagram? People talking about this?
Well, I mean, it's been brewing away for a few, literally brewing away for a few years there, of like using your own piss as a sort of like a as a medicine.
Ugh.
So again, I mean, when I say Chinese and Ayurvedic medicine, again, it's just been documented that it can be used. Again, in developing countries, for example, as such as Africa, they don't have the access that we have to standard medical care. So again, urine is something that you likely would use. Again, maybe there's access to water issues, but again, it does have sort of unique pH capacities, and it's got some interactions there with skin, and skin health based on sort of urea. Okay, so again, yeah, if you look at some skin creams, they actually contain urea in them. So again, your piss actually contains urea. So again, there is some connection there,
Mm.
reflecting the sort of the pH effect. But again, I mean, generally, there's a reason why your mouth is not close to your genitals. Okay, I don't think it should really be going there. And again, like we know, and maybe like some of the audience knows, there's organic acid testing out there. What do you see in organic acid testing? Again, you see things like oxalates. Okay, you see things like candida byproducts. So um, the name's arabinose. So again, we see heavy metals in urine. We also see something called deuterium. And again, this is a waste product or a different type of sugar that our body uses. Oh no, sorry, a different type of hydrogen that our body uses and expels. Again, for me, it doesn't make any common sense to be drinking our urine in this day and age, basically. Again, if we needed it for survival reasons, or again we got stranded, I actually think I watched a Portuguese surf film recently, and a guy drank his urine as well. Um, but again, there's no need to be drinking it now.
No.
So again, I just think this is a bit far fetched,
Yeah.
and again, just quite honestly, not really needed. But again, I'm also in the on the same line that okay, if you do that, good for you. If you get benefits from it, good for you. There's no problem, good for you. But again, I think it's when you sort of share that and inspire that out, you do need to add context. What I gave generally. Um, but again, I just don't think there's any need to do it. And it's again an excretory pathway of your body. It's where we detox. Again, not needed.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, there's one more topic that I wanted to ask you there. We've covered all sorts of nutrition based topics, including urine therapy, and I think we've ticked that one off. But I did notice that you've been covering protein choices for biohackers and protein choices for people. And obviously, this is something that Eddie Abu looks at a lot. We've already mentioned him. Protein, an essential component of any biohacker's diet. And I'm really interested, actually, while you're on, because I've definitely tried to increase my protein intake recently. It's quite hard, isn't it? You think, oh, I'm having a few eggs in the morning, and actually you need to eat a lot to get enough protein. So what are the sorts of protein, and bearing in mind that you said that everybody is different and nuance is needed, there are so many fake protein products, aren't there? Loaded with additives, loaded with artificial ingredients. You've got inflamed cows, skimmed milk, and you've got sugar laden whey products. And plant-based powders as well. I'm interested to know what you approve of and what's an absolute no-no.
And I think that is just from an animal to a certain degree. So again, there's levels to this. So again, not everyone can afford grass-fed organic stuff. But again, even if you did eat the best quality conventionally grown stuff out there, it's still better typically in what studies have shown than the vegan crap out there basically. It's still a leg up essentially. So again, we shouldn't feel that okay, it can't be grass fed, it's not organic, I'm just going to revert back to whey protein powder or this vegan protein powder. I still think it's very important to always be consuming food, eating a meal. It's an experience, like we talked prior before coming on here. Um, but again, like I said, variety with protein sources, and again, whatever's available to you, whatever you can get your hands on. Again, what I used to do is I used to shop in this butcher called Lidgate's, and every Thursday they had an offer, and then it was half price. Sometimes it was like lamb neck fillets. Sometimes it
Mm.
was lamb kidneys. Sometimes it was ongole. Sometimes it was, I don't know, beef shin or whatever it was. I used to just buy a few kilos of that, tuck it away in my freezer, cook some of it now, and then bang, that would be like 3 days of food for me, basically.
Lovely. Yeah.
So again, you just again, I think the problem comes again, like I just said, being reliant on the supermarket is making you restricted in your choices and
Mm.
your way of thinking. Again, go to a farmer's market, where's all the protein bars? Where's the protein milk? Where's the protein crisps? Where's the protein crackers? There's none. It's literally you buy your eggs, you buy your meat, cheese, yogurt, milk, and then you're on your way, basically. So again, I mean, I would relatively say for most people should be eating like 1 gram of body weight in kilos as I would say as a minimum, basically. And again, that's probably just above what, well, more than just what the government recommends for our intake as a
So
whole.
so what's 1 gram of protein per kilo of body weight?
Yeah. And again, I would say that's very low. I would say for me, I probably like maybe two.
Yeah.
But again, I would probably say for most people, like 1.2, 1.5 is probably going to be a good thing. Now, like I said, it's not just about the protein, it's not just about the amino acids, it's how the protein works in our body. Again, there's nutrients that enhance that. So, again, things like vitamin B6 has a very influential role of protein, so does zinc as well. But again, also, again, not going too complex in this, but how protein unfolds and works inside the cell connected to water.
Mm.
Okay. So again, it's a bit like DNA. It's all like wrapped up, but again, it's basically when you open it out, it's all connecting to sort of hydrogen bonds. Okay. So again, I won't get too down the rabbit hole in that. But again, I mean, the healthier you are, I would say, the less protein you technically need as well.
Right.
Okay. And that would be, again, have an effect on light. So again, maybe you've noticed this. I'm living in Portugal, and maybe obviously it's the summer right now. Your hair grows faster in the summer.
Oh
Your
yeah.
your
Yeah.
nails grow faster in the summer. Now again, you might have not changed your protein. It's the actual interaction of things such as growth hormone, or again other things to do with insulin sensitivity and signaling going on there with
Mm.
how that influences protein, and again how we grow, basically. So again, it's not just about eating an X number, but again it's about our overall physiology enhancing the effect of that moderate protein diet. But again, I'm a big fan of fish, certain fish, seafood, from obviously not the big predator stuff. Um, I think there's nothing wrong with using dairy products. Again, I would be avoiding all the low fat, processed stuff. I'd be keeping it as natural as possible. So again, whether that's high fat, whether it comes with, basically, I think cheese is okay. But again, with the dairy products, and you go on the high fat side, it is increasing the energy density of the food. So again, if people are trying to maintain their body weight, just be mindful of that. But again, dairy has a very good effect, or a high fat dairy has a very good effect in various health parameters of our body. Again, especially like female health and reproduction, or even males' reproduction as well. Um, Again, I do think there is a time and place for maybe if you did want a whey protein powder, whey protein isolate.
Mm.
Again, but again, that's just like the cherry on the cake.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not needed. But again, for example, you live in a city, there's absolutely no options to eat anything. Maybe you trained, maybe you actually ran to work. So again, maybe there's a time and place for that. I would just say, obviously, when needed, use it. But again, if you're at home and you got access, again, ideally get some smoked mackerel, pick something up. There's usually some options, or be prepared. Okay, but again, I think whey protein is convenient. Again, it's got health benefits in itself. If depending where you buy it from, how it's processed, it contains lactoferrin. It's got many great things involved with that. Um, and again, like say, a unique company that I sort of discovered or connected to the founder, Organized. I don't know if you saw at the Health Optimization Summit, but again, he's basically created this protein powder which contains colostrum, collagen, and I think there's creatine in the mix there as well. So again, some unique things going in, and it's made it into this sort of whole food protein powder. And then you
Wow.
basically just add maybe your fruit or your milk of choice into the mix, basically.
Sounds
And again,
great.
yeah, so again, that's a new thing that's I think he launched it at the Health Optimization Summit, and it's called Organized. And again, I'm not affiliated with it or whatever. I just think it's a good product. But
Mm.
again, I also wouldn't recommend it to everyone as well, because again, it's also £70. It's also, yeah, it hasn't got the satiety factors per se as eating a meal. Okay.
Yeah.
But again, I always think it's a food-based route and a meal-based route of optimizing your protein intake. And again, if you're noticing yourself, you're still hungry, again, be mindful. Is there actual fat in your food? Is there actually any plant matter in your food or your meal as well? Sorry. Again, or is it just too lean in protein? Because again, you can actually eat too much protein with not enough fat or carbohydrates and still be hungry as well. Okay, so again, just understand that like again, you want to be around like 10 to 20% of that fat with the protein as well. So not going too lean or low fat with your protein choices, where you
Mm.
might see like 95 or 99% lean ground beef. Again, I would just say that you want a bit of fat with that. Now, again, you don't want it to be too excessive, but you want some in there. It also tastes nicer as well. So again, I've recently started a company called Oath, which is launching actually next week. So again, that's July the 1st. And again, we got the ground beef, the ground lamb, again, having a nice fat layer into it, fat percentage, but we're also adding in things like bone marrow into the burgers and sausages as well.
Well, let me ask you a little bit more about that then, because we've got this review section, which is a separate podcast now. It's just about 5 minutes, and it can be anything from a supplement to a gadget to a tech or a technique. And thought it'd be really interesting to look at this new venture that you are affiliated with, because it's such a cool idea, mate. I mean, like,
Yeah.
you're not coming home, are you? You're staying in Nicaragua, right?
Again, I mean, I haven't got any ticket or plans to come back to the UK at
Oh,
all.
I'm so sad. We've lost you forever.
But again, I mean, I'd never say never. But again, I mean, maybe like next year or 2 years' time, potentially. But again, I
Yeah,
mean, I have no plans to really travel right now.
yeah.
Um,
You'll come back. You'll come back and see us, even if you don't move back permanently. How's that?
For sure. I mean,
Yeah,
even like the flights to get there, once you get to Mexico City, it's not that bad. It's like 13 hours. So again, it's doable. It's not a problem. Again, it's
yeah.
just there's just
Just
no real reason. But again, when maybe when Oath launches and then, like
yeah,
maybe there's some publicity or something important meetings, maybe I come.
yeah.
But again, it's going to require a very good reason for me to leave here and leave my baby, basically.
Ah, yeah, yeah. Well, we want to meet your baby at some point. Remember that your friends want you here as well at some point.
Well, again, I
But
mean,
yeah.
there's always the options of coming out here to Nicaragua as well and
Ooh,
experience
yeah,
this.
yeah. And I met your mate Tristan from the Light Computer. Is that the name of his
They
company?
so again, Daylight Co. So
Daylight
again,
Co. Yeah, I want to feature that on this podcast actually because it's such a great idea. He's been out to see you, I know. Let's talk about Oath Foods then. So this when this podcast goes out, it will be out. And tell us Oath Foods what it is and what people can expect.
so this was an idea when I was becoming a nutritional therapist, and I was like, everyone complains about organ meats, liver, bleh, it's disgusting. But again, I think there was like a case study, and we had to find ways of okay, how can we incorporate organ meats in this one client as a case study? And again, I was just thinking, everyone likes sausages, burgers. Again, it's a British staple. Why hasn't anyone else come up with this idea? And again, I
Mm,
think at the time this was when Heck sausages were launching as well. And again, they actually had like some unique flavor profiles. They were using like chicken, they were using like some weird stuff. I was like, well, that's an interesting concept. Why can't we flavor these and then add some nutrient density with some organs in the mix there as well? So again, that was just an idea I had, and it's just been sitting in the back of my mind, waiting or brewing for the right time.
mm,
And again, obviously, I completed my nutritional therapist diploma, and I like obviously moved country, and various things happened. And ironically, I was working with this client, and our time together actually finished as well. And he was saying, I'm working for like BA, I'm doing all this marketing and branding stuff, blah, blah, blah. And he's very much embodied all the principles that I sort of empowered him with. And I was like, well, this actually could be interesting if I just plant the seed in his mind as well. I trust him with this idea. Let's see what he thinks. And again, he was just like, boom, this is amazing. And he was like, oh, I have also another friend who I think we should get involved in this and start the three of us and move this forward. And he's called Josh, and he's the founder of Ape Nutrition, which maybe some of the listeners are familiar with.
yeah.
And obviously, he's got the background of having a company already in the health space and like understanding logistics, the website, all the back end stuff, all the like the non fancy stuff. And again, we had a meeting, and then again, is Nick is like the brains behind like understanding the culture of why we're doing this basically. And like when I'm talking, he's basically extracting this and putting it basically in better terms that most people can understand. And again, it's sort of a culture and experience that we're trying to inspire people with. That's why you see some of the content that we push right now, it's nothing to do about with the food per se. You're not seeing, okay, it's just the actual meat. It's just about eating beef, and it's about this approach. It's about the culture. It's about the experience, about like breaking bread, basically, or breaking bangers
Lovely.
together.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
again, bringing people around the table, understanding for the children around the table where this food comes from. It's raised from happy cows or lamb or venison, understanding about the soil, understanding like the principles around about eating food. Again, a
Mm.
supplement can be helpful. I'm not the biggest fans of most supplements out there. Again, I do recommend them for some clients. But again, a food, eating a meal can never be replaced by a supplement. A bit like sunlight can will never be replaced by a vitamin D supplement. Okay.
And
Sharing a
so you're
meal.
selling sort of burgers. I can see the everything burger, the beef and heart burger, the pork and liver sausage, the venison and heart sausage. It's just such a great idea.
Yeah, so again, we're launching with just 4 items, just to keep it fairly straight up. Listen to some feedback from the launch, and then we can develop things from there. But again, I mean, there's ideas around having like a meatball. There's ideas of having, obviously, this is another. The next phase would be a ground mix, essentially.
Mm.
So again, that could be people do it yourself, or again, maybe they want a ragu or bolognese, or maybe they want to make their own burgers. That's cool. Maybe it's cheaper for them to do it that way. Again, we respect that. It's all about just getting the meat and these the food in front of people basically to
Mm.
experience and understand more about. So again, that's touching upon the premise of like protein is important, but so are the micronutrients involved with that. So is the experience around eating around a table together. So is the experience about preparing the food, what you cook with the food, how you cook it, what type of cooking fat. Do you need some herbs with that to protect it from the glycation then products, etc., etc. And again, there's maybe ideas around having like a pate, because basically all the chicken liver or liver pates out there in the UK, they are like poor quality, or the origin of them is not that great. So again, there's so many, there's more things in the pipeline basically. But again, we're launching with just 4. We want feedback. We want to be listening. We want to adapt. Um, Again, we want to be direct to consumer. We have no aspiration of being in Waitrose, Whole Foods, Planet Organic. For them, I mean, for us, they're basically stealing more money away. They're stealing the value, basically. They're also changing the logistics around needing plastics, which we want to avoid at all costs.
Mm.
We want to keep it traditional. We want to keep it use natural preservatives, basically. We want to just be direct as cheap as possible, and that's just going to be led from our website, essentially.
Wow.
And just keep it as organic, literally like as a company as possible. Um,
Fantastic.
and just see where it goes basically.
Yeah.
Again, who knows, maybe the US, maybe Australia, maybe like Middle East, maybe Europe, like hopefully so. um
Maybe
because again,
Portugal.
yeah, well, again, that'd be like in the EU. But again, I mean, I just think there's a need for it out there. So why would you want to eat ground beef when you could have some organs mixed into that as
Mm.
well without even realizing it?
Oh yeah, yeah, beautiful. Listen, that's a absolutely brilliant idea. And so it's starting. So if people listening to this are probably thinking, you're right. There will be people, especially in the States, thinking, "Oh, I'd love that." At the moment, it's UK based.
It's UK at the moment, but again, we do have plans of expanding in other sort of continents.
Okay, brilliant. Well, I know you're going to send me some, so I'll do a live taste test, and I'm sure I've just been looking at the site. It looks absolutely amazing. Um, Good luck with that and with everything you're doing. I'm just like I've really loved hearing about life in Nicaragua.
Yeah, well, again, I mean, there's assumptions around the country, whether it's like political or safety wise. But again, I mean, it's for me, it's safer than living in London by far.
Mm,
Again, you don't have people like driving by on scooters trying to rob you, being in bandanas. Again, people here are very down to earth, lovely people, very safe. Again, if you don't, if you've been like looking at holiday to Costa Rica and like, wow, that's expensive. literally just look up the coast a little bit to Nicaragua. It's going to be like half or a fraction of the cost, basically.
Right. Yeah.
But again, it can be difficult to get to. So again, there is some logistics issues, but again, it's possible. You can fly into Mexico City to Managua, or again, you can travel up from Costa Rica to here, which is very accessible. Because I'm in the south part of Nicaragua, so I'm very close. I'm closer to Costa Rica border than like the capital here. So again, it's easier for
Right.
me to fly out of Costa Rica opposed to the capital here.
You got a nice community there?
Yeah, I mean, I keep myself to myself more or less. But again, there's some really cool local people I've made friends with. Um, there's some Americans, there's some Canadians, there's some Brits around. Again, it's a really nice mixed bag of culture here. But again, it's predominantly like locals, Nicaraguans here. And again, they're really like down to earth people. But again, they're not used to maybe my wackiness with like red lights at nighttime, my desire for the sun. They think I'm a bit crazy walking around with just shorts on, and like why am I wearing like proper shoes when I'm like walking through the jungle? But again, I mean, it's again what I'm trying to educate them as well. I'm trying to distill and plant a seed in their mind about the importance of sun, because again, you can see some traits where they're heading from what's happening in the UK. Again, there's like pharmacies on every single corner. They're very reliant on medicines. And again, it's just because they just don't have the education. Because again, there's a big difference in economics here. This is like
Mm,
one of the poorest countries in the world.
mm.
And again, the average wage per month is around like $200 to $300.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, we're always the wacky ones wherever we go. So
Well,
it wouldn't really
I mean, we
matter.
stand up with either lights up our nose or these crazy glasses, or I don't know,
Yeah.
jumpsuits blocking EMFs on the plane. Again, you can see us from a mile off.
Just before you go, I was interviewing Erin Smith earlier on, who we were hanging out with at one of the biohacking conferences years ago. And I was remembering, I can't remember that whether it was you or me, got a hair test. Do you remember this?
Which
And
which con- which
it was at
conference?
one of the conferences, like one of these hair mineral tests where they test for the amount of heavy metals in your hair. And I think it was me, might have been you. I think it was me. The guy took such a big chunk of hair out the back of my head. He left me with a completely different looking haircut.
This was you. This was
Yeah, it
you.
was. Yeah. Oh, I was so annoyed.
I think he actually like. I think he used like a clipper or something like that. I
Yeah, I
think
had
this
to
must
wear.
have been in L. I think this must have been in LA, in a
Yeah,
bulletproof conference.
it was the bulletproof conference. I think I had to wear a baseball cap for the rest of the weekend. Right. I'm glad you remember that. Originally I thought that was Ryan, but it was definitely me. I
No,
tried
no,
to
I
block it
remember that.
out.
I
Yeah,
remember that because I think your reaction was like, "What the hell just happened to me? That's not normal."
yeah.
He
And then
took
I
more than
thought,
what he needed
oh, there's Ryan. I'll go and ask him if he thinks it's okay. He'll make me feel better about it. And you had a look and you were like, bloody hell, mate.
for a cap, put a baseball cap on.
Yeah. Ryan, listen, thanks so much for coming on. It's really, honestly, brilliant to catch up. Where can people find you and Live Vitae?
Yeah, so I have a website, levite.com. There's a newsletter as well, which I share a weekly newsletter. Again, Instagram, even on Twitter or X. I'm pretty active on X and that platform there, just because of just its engagement and its openness compared to other social media channels. So on X, I'm Livite UK. I tend to share more studies and science there.
Mm.
Instagram is I wouldn't say dumbed down, but again, it's a bit more easier to understand essentially. Um, and again, that's it. Again, if you're interested in working with me, obviously my website, or again, if you want to know more about O Foods, again, it's ofoods.co. And again, like I said, we'll be launched when this is out. So again, please check us out and sign up to a newsletter there. And maybe there's some seasonal offers going on.
Epic. Ryan, thanks. Thanks for coming on. Let's do this again soon. Really lovely to catch up.
Thank you, Tony.
There you go, Ryan Carter. Thanks everyone for watching live on LinkedIn and YouTube and X. And if you're listening, there's another podcast coming soon. So thanks very much for listening.